Love to hear your thoughts on that story. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think it will be positive?
It's a big story because they're the two major countries in the world as far as superpowers, the status of military might, and everything that they do affects each other in the world. So we're going to have to see if President Biden can be firm with Russia on certain things like the possible involvement with the attack on the cyber attack when it came to intelligence gathering. With SolarWinds, for example, or the economic attacks for financial gain that the criminal gangs are putting forth with companies that are in the United States that are very crucial to the economy. So something that he has to offer them, besides the negative punishment or the kind of attitude toward, Russia's got to shape up or ship out. The other thing he has to offer them is maybe going back to some of those arms control agreements that we had before that President Trump did not renew. So it has to be a carrot and a stick at the same time. And this is very serious because it affects the economy of the United States gigantically, and the Colonial Pipeline is a good example. The East Coast supply of gasoline and oil was cut off, the entire supply, for several days because of the attack on that Colonial Pipeline. So this has to be dealt with firmly with a carrot and a stick, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. An enormous history here, dating back forever. The Cold War, of course, most recently. It seems like anything that goes on in this space, the finger immediately gets pointed because of history in many ways.
Yes, it does. It goes back to old Soviet-U.S. relations. And I think the good part of that was when President Nixon was able to work through détente to offer, again, carrots to the Soviet Union, but also the stick at the same time. And the carrots were quite strong, offering many arms control agreements and mutual trust in terms of on-site inspections for those agreements, for example. And yet at the same time be firm that the U.S. has to be protected in our own economy, our own way of life, no interference in terms of our elections. That's very important. That's for democracy. That has to be made very clear by President Biden. So I think if he does the balanced approach, it'll be much better and not restart a whole new Cold War again.
Professor, a big announcement. The G7 nations have reached a historic agreement to tax multinational corporations, and then the leaders of the G7, or known as G+, will arrive at the end of next week, including our Prime Minister Scott Morrison, set to hold his first face-to-face meeting with your President Biden. They're set to discuss the warning against carbon tariffs to force climate change inaction, but certainly not the only topic that's going to be discussed.
Yes, and I think the primary topic is getting that tax fairness across the board to make sure the corporations don't just jump from one country to the other for low tax havens or stash their money away and not pay taxes to a given government, as many of the big companies in America have been doing, avoiding taxes and costing the U.S. Treasury. In this case, if the G7 plus get it together and say these taxes are going to be uniform across the board, each of us are going to enforce them carefully so corporations can't take advantage of any given one nation or tax haven. That is so important for economics and for the social structure of the society as well.
It's amazing how the world turns. This time last year, Professor, we were talking about the COVID situation and you were saying, well, we could learn a lot from Australia. Well, things have turned dramatically because really it's been hopeless in many people's eyes, the whole vaccination rollout here, but it's been outstanding the past few months in the US.
It certainly has. And the reason I mentioned those things earlier is because Australia did a very exemplary job in terms of stopping the virus cold in its tracks through masking and social distancing. The preventive measures were wonderful. We need to learn from you on that because we were backward on that. This time we're ahead now with the vaccination program that Joe Biden's his government has handled so well with getting the vaccines out to so many people, giving them incentives. So now 63% of our people have had at least one vaccine dose. And it's really remarkable how much actually brought the numbers way down. So it is quite ironic that things have switched. I think we can learn from each other in a sense, and we must do that right away. But one more thing about these vaccines, you have to have a global campaign for vaccinations. If our country is able to get these numbers so far down because of vaccinations, that doesn't mean the whole world is safe or that we'll be safe. Because if the rest of the world doesn't get vaccinated properly and fully, the variants can surface and get even more, multiply even more, and come back to haunt us here. New variants will come up because of new infections. So we've got to make this a global effort, and there must be more coordination in that regard.
Yeah, we're learning from all countries, including the US, as you said, also Israel, seeing what they're doing. In terms of your employment, over 500,000 people have been employed as the doors have been open to restaurants and so forth, but the unemployment rate has lowered. Are they happy with the progress?
Quite positive overall, because as you mentioned, unemployment has gone down. The small businesses are opening up and the vaccination rates have gone way up, and that's keeping people safer. to be able to go in and socialize more without some of the old strictures. So we have to be careful how we do it. For example, children under 12 are not vaccinated yet. They're not even eligible. They're not eligible for the vaccination yet. And they need to get on it as far as that goes as soon as possible, which might be as late as September or as early as September, in time for school, hopefully. But if that's not done, you're still leaving a lot of vulnerable population among the children that could infect the adults. So we have to still be careful and vigilant, but still enjoy the opening as it's going slowly but surely.
I know that you've got school-aged children, Peter. How are the school systems going at the moment?
Well, this is summer now. We almost have summer break. Our daughter is already off from school about a week ago, and for the summer, for the next 3 months. And the other children are still in a few other schools, are still in school for the next week or so. And they've been gone, many of them went back to campus. They've been wearing masks and social distancing. And the infection rates so far, as we can tell, seem to be okay, not high as of yet, but we haven't tested all the kids. That's the other thing. You've got to test these children regularly once they go back to school to see if the infection rates are spreading, especially if they're not wearing masks like the under 12-year-olds. That has to be kept a handle on. Otherwise, you could have a hidden infection that could go on to the adults as well. And the variants are the key. This is the key. We've got to smash the variants as soon as possible by doing all of this together.
This week, Joe Biden has defended Dr. Anthony Fauci over the recent leaked emails regarding the theory that COVID-19 leaked from a Wuhan lab. What's the latest on that?
Well, it looks like the right wing, is attacking Dr. Fauci even more and more, even though Dr. Fauci worked under President Trump during that time, and he was going according to the data that was available in terms of his statements, and those things change as the data changes. So I think it's kind of controversial right now in some quarters, but most of the country, I believe, trusts Dr. Fauci's judgments and the administration's decisions based on them. Even today, the majority do trust it and are taking that advice. So I think it's a certain group of people that want to attack him for political purposes, but Dr. Fauci is defending himself as best he can. I think it's a pretty good job so far.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a punching bag, hasn't he, really?
Yes.
Extraordinary man. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch that space as we move forward.